Well, I was thinking today it might be a good idea to think about something that I think teachers think about when they're structuring in-person lessons, but that takes on perhaps a different level of importance when you're thinking about how to construct lessons that are primarily going to be delivered online and asynchronously. And that is like, how do you strike this balance between structure, so students kind of know what to expect in a learning situation, and novelty, so that students aren't getting bored or feel like they're doing the same thing all the time?
That's a really good thing to discuss. And I think that it's hard to strike that balance. You know, in a brick and mortar space, we can mix it up just simply because we're there in person, right? I mean, different days bring different things. But there is something to be said about the expectations of what is to come, right? If everything is so new, it's hard to follow. But if everything's all the same, it gets boring.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Well, so how do you strike that balance? What are some things that you do to make sure that your students know what to expect and yet don't feel like they're just answering the same questions over and over again?
Okay, well, keeping in mind that I primarily teach world history, in case that seems relevant, although I think that some of these ideas can be adapted to any content area. One is, when you are structuring your lessons, it's a good idea to have a consistent format for the lesson, so that students, after they've done the first lesson or two, they're kind of like, okay, I know where to find the things that I'm going to be expected to use. I know how I'm going to share things that I've done with the instructor, but perhaps also with other students, whether that's through a discussion board or through something like a Padlet that's embedded into a page in your LMS where students can share ideas, so that there's a sense of familiarity, so the student doesn't feel like, okay, every time I go into this, open up a lesson, I have no idea what to expect, versus, okay, I kind of have an idea of a structure and a format. So I think it's important to kind of think about what that could look like for you. Now, in some school situations, that might be given to you. There may be a lesson template that a school district or a school implements building-wide, so that students have a more consistent experience across the board. But if it's left up to the individual teacher, then I think it's important for the teacher to really think about, okay, what are some common components that the lessons are going to have, and how am I going to structure those? How will those flow in such a way that they make sense to the student, and that they kind of have a sense of, you know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to find this, this, and this. So considering that before you start, also think if there are like visual cues that you could use for students to kind of help them through transitions in lessons. If you're going from, let's say you're asking students kind of an anticipatory set type of question or activity, a hook for the lesson, so to speak, you know, perhaps that is a particular color, like either the background of the page, an icon on the page, something like that. And then when the students are going to be looking at sources or looking at sample problems for a science or a math class or something, or they're going to be looking at a text for an ELA class, you know, perhaps that's a different color. Perhaps, you know, that's there's a particular icon on a page. So those are some things to consider to help students with visual cues, so they kind of know, okay, I'm moving on to a different part of the lesson now. Perhaps my thinking needs to change a little bit. I'm going to thinking about what I think is going to happen in the lesson, or what I already know about this topic, to, okay, now I'm going to be exploring something, some information about this topic or this activity or this type of math concept. And then I'm going to move on to some practice. Okay, I'm going to actually do some problems. I'm going to answer some questions about this text. I'm going to do some analysis of a source. And then perhaps there is a type of formative assessment that the student's going to be doing. Perhaps there's an opportunity to share ideas with other students via discussion board or some other Flipgrid activity, something like that. And then there's perhaps like an extension activity or opportunity for either remediation. If on the formative assessment a student didn't do particularly well, perhaps there's an additional set of resources or activities for the student to look at, or if they did well, an extension piece. What else can you do with this? And then a closure activity or idea reflection piece that the student can do to kind of tie the lesson together.